Okay, it is now 6:28 and the board has returned from executive session. Our next agenda item is our opening celebrations and updates by
Próximo
our
artículo
superintendent.
en la
Dr.
agenda
Rodriguez.
van a hacer unos comentarios del
Thank you. I'll try to
superintendente
be pretty
Rodríguez.
brief, but first just wanted
Gracias, voy
to
a
shout
tratar de
out
ser
and
bastante breve,
recognize
pero
that
antes
it's
quería
Teacher
agradecer
Appreciation Week.
ser por
We
la,
put together a small video
la
of
semana de
appreciation
agradecimiento a los
stickers and
maestros. Nosotros
sending out some
pusimos
goodies this week.
un
We
negocio y
recognize
un
that
video y también
it's just a very
vamos a
small token of appreciation
también a
for all
enviarles
of the
unos
things that our
regalitos
teachers do for our students.
como
So
agradecimiento
just want to
por
start by
todas las
shouting
cosas que hacen
our
los
teachers
maestros
out.
con
Then a quick
nuestros
update on our
estudiantes
portrait of a
y
graduate
también
and core values
una
work.
actualización.
Our design team
También
met
está
with
la
4
graduación en
students
nuestro equipo
at
de
Bridges
diseño.
last week who
Nuestros
helped to
estudiantes en
design
Bridges
prototypes, which were really
ayudaron a
creative.
diseñar
It was
prototipos, los
awesome
cuales
to
fueron
have
bastante
the energy of
creativos
the
y fue
students.
muy bueno
And
tener la
all
energía de los
4
estudiantes.
ideas
Y
were
todas estas
very
ideas, las 4
unique
ideas,
against each
fueron
other, and then there were some
bastante
elements that
únicas en
were
contra de
common. And
ellos
so
mismos.
next steps
Y
are
algunas ideas que
for
también fueron bastante
graphic artists to
comunes.
sort of
El
merge
próximo paso
the
van a ser los
ideas and all of the feedback that we received from about 250 people who took the surveys, about half of them being students. So just really exciting work. This is a plug for our staff that we have benefits open enrollment taking place right now. As you all know, we are shifting for our benefits and health benefits providers going into next year. And so we just want folks to know to sign up, and everybody has to sign up, even if you're not making any changes. So I think hopefully HR and finance team appreciate the nudge for staff. And then also, as we announced last week, we've finalized the search for permanent chief of HR, which is Mrs. Begonia Platt. We invited 56 members of our team to provide feedback on HR candidates' performance tasks. 28 answered the call, including 3 HR team members, 3 RFCEA members, 4 department leaders, 4 instructional team members, 8 school leaders, the entire executive team. And then there were a few members who had volunteered that weren't able to provide feedback in time, but we had a lot of folks who participated in that process. Right after our last meeting, I had the opportunity to go to Canyon City for our final convening for the Rural Superintendent's Academy, which I've been a part of this year. It's been a really beneficial learning experience for me, a great networking opportunity. There's 12 other sitting superintendents that are part of that cohort. And of course, our facilitator is a experienced rural superintendent from Colorado, 25 years as a superintendent. And it was just a really beneficial learning experience. Our final topic was around transitions. And so I just sort of want to take this opportunity to, again, remind folks transitions are a natural part of the school cycle, right? Whether we're talking about board members potentially cycling out of their roles on the board and transitioning new folks in, and we got to be really intentional about how we transition folks into these new roles. And same is true whether we're hiring awesome teachers to join our instructional facilitator roles and instructional team, that we have to have a transition plan for them coming in, as well as for folks who are replacing them. And the same is true for every position in between. So just sort of a plug there for us to be really thoughtful of setting up whoever our successors are for success. And then last week, Chief Speen, Park, and I met with the Teacher Advisory Council. Chief Park mostly facilitated discussion to inform our instructional priorities and support our planning processes for next year. We asked questions like, by levels, what has been going well with instruction and academics, what's been going well around culture, what hasn't been going so well with instruction, academics, or culture. And then we wondered, what are 2 to 3 things that we should consider for instructional priorities or student culture priorities for next year. And so the feedback that we got from those folks is really helpful and informative for our team as we begin to plan for next year. This is a backwards shout out, but on Sunday, we had the pre-collegiate graduation. So just a shout out for all of our seniors from Basalt High School, Roaring Fork High School, Glenwood Springs High School, who are part of pre-collegiate, doing awesome things and getting ready to take on college and their next steps in life. And then a plug for next week, we have the final coffee chats with the superintendent of the school year on May 15th in Glenwood Springs, the 16th in Carbondale, and then the 17th in Basalt. So just a plug. Hope to see many of you there. Always welcome and enjoy our chats there. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay. The next business in order is action on 2 contracts related to the Meadowwood Housing Project, the architect contract and framing package contract.
I move that the board approve the architect contract and framing package contract for the Meadowwood Housing Project.
I second.
It's now time for board discussion. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share any comments. We will begin with Director Stepp.
Thank you, Chief Gatlin. I appreciate all the information that you've given us on this project. And I don't have any further questions at this time.
Director Torres.
I also appreciate the time to explain to us why we were going in a different direction as far as approving this framing contract ahead of the arching contract. And it makes a lot of sense to lock in this particular framing contractor so that we can ensure that we have somebody who's not only skilled, but also has a wide known reputation for this project locked down. So I think that's a very good direction for us to be starting and moving forward. Thank you.
Director Tyler.
I would just like to say thank you, Chief Gatlin, for all of the legwork that you have put into this and for doing something that is going to help our staff as far as retention and recruiting, which are big key points that we're looking to work towards and will help us in the long run. And hopefully this is the first of the next steps where we're getting our shovel into the ground. And as far as the 2 things that we're approving today, they're just steps in the process and nothing that seems to surprise us or why are we doing this, but things that are much with the negotiations that we've had with our main contractor, FCI, in the past. And so I just feel comfortable knowing that we are working the way we should be working and that this wasn't anything coming to us as like, wow, watch out, but everything that is normal. So thank you.
I echo the thanks to you and Chief Markham and Director Tytler and Superintendent Rodriguez for all your guys' work on this. And I also appreciate you keeping us up to date on any changes and anything we need to do to ensure that we are able to work through this and move on it as fast as possible. So thank you. We will now have 5 minutes for open discussion.
I just want to say, just for the viewing of like, we're making this decision, we haven't had conversation. We just came out of an executive session where this was the topic and we have been briefed on what we are talking about now. So it's not like we're not discussing that. I just want to make sure that that is clear, that we've had these discussions beforehand.
Yeah, just to echo what Director Tytler said is I'm just so excited that we're adding 50 more units into our inventory for teacher housing. And I'm excited that, at that point, after they're built, then the housing committee takes on the kind of the process for who gets what. And they've been doing that with all of them. So is that 130 total then?
130, including the 14 for purchase units at Basalt Vista, 116 rentals.
Awesome. Thanks again.
I do agree. And I think it's important to that the staff memo, the architect contract, the framing contract is all available to the public. It's attached to this agenda so that the community has equal access to review all of these updates as we are getting closer to moving forward in this project. And I think these are obviously milestones that we need to approve along the way. But that I would encourage others to just look at it to keep up to date.
I guess Chief Gallen, do you have anything that you feel is really important for us to share during this board meeting regarding the staff memo or the contract?
You know, I think it's just important to know process wise what happens next. And so the one of the key next steps will be to bring, you know, a more robust guaranteed maximum price contract from the contractor to you. And, you know, this one package was just getting ahead of some tremendous scarcity that we're seeing amongst contractors and with resources. So next steps, you know, one of the next things that'll happen will be bringing a similar package to you with really what the whole project amount will be. But I just want to echo the excitement around you know, knowing the need that we have for more rentals in our program and in our inventory, to see how this project has started to develop and what it's turning into, I think is going to be really exciting. And I'm thankful for the support and to have driven some of the work.
And to echo what you had said to Chief Gatlin of seeing the pictures that were presented today, like the architect pictures of what it should look like, was very exciting, and it made it seem like it's really happening. So that was exciting.
Any other comments? Please call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Thanks. The next business in order is a presentation on our early childhood education program with action on the ECE fees for the 2023-2024 school year.
I move that the board approve the ECE fees for the 2023-2024 as presented.
I'll second.
Well, hey, everybody. You know me, I'm Anna Cole, the Chief of Student Family Services. And I'm delighted to be here tonight with Lori Brumbaugh, who's the instructional facilitator for the early childhood department, and Faride Rodriguez, who is our business coordinator for the early childhood program. And we are, besides bringing you some action items around tuition and around our staff sliding scale, we're just super excited to share with you some of the things we've been working on this year as a result of last year's strategic plan. So you've seen our program vision. So this should feel familiar. This was an outcome of our strategic planning process last year. And Lori, Faride, and I represent a really impressive team of our early childhood leadership team is 5 directors of our 5 early childhood programs, our 5 early childhood special educators also in our programs. We have a program in every elementary school. And then we also represent over 50 of who we believe are pretty much the most important folks in the district, or employees of the district, who are our early childhood staff, our lead teachers and our classroom teachers, paraprofessionals, about 50, more than 50 of those folks who work with our kids every day. We've had a really busy year. We won't go through all the details. There's some cool kind of at a glance materials that were linked in the packet about kind of where our program's at, how many kids are in the program. Some of the work that we really leaned into this year as part of our strategic plan. And Lori and Faride are going to talk more about that. Oh, there we go. Okay. And so lots of highlights this year, especially around paying attention to universal preschool, we've launched some professional development pathways you'll hear about, some partnership work at the Salt Elementary School, and some really great work around high quality inclusion. So Faride is going to talk a little bit about UPK registration, what things are looking like for us, and then really frame kind of the tuition and staff sliding scale pieces.
Yeah, so we're really excited about being a part of Universal Preschool starting this fall. This is a new program that we're really excited about because we believe it'll bring more awareness to early childhood and allow more of our students to have access to early childhood. we are going to be live in the system in the next few weeks. So because we are aware that more students will have access, we are expanding our centers. We're opening 3 new classrooms to ensure that those students who are eligible for 3 hours of preschool can have a space in our program. We have received over 300 applications, and so we're now working closely with our directors to build classrooms and start to fill those spaces. These are the proposed tuition rates. We're really excited for our families about the benefits of universal preschool and really the support on the finances that will come to our families. And so you can see there, depending on the benefits that they get is the tuition that they will pay. There is an increase in tuition, and that is because when we met with our community lead, we found that we were an outlier in tuition. And so that really impacted the universal preschool reimbursement that every district receives for students. And so we didn't want that to happen. We're still, our tuition is still low compared to most districts, but we needed to increase it to not be an outlier. We know that because tuition is increasing, families will need more support to cover the costs. And so we're working really closely with families when we see there is a need to help them through different programs to help cover the cost of tuition. We're also really excited about the staff sliding scale, the scholarship program that helps all of the district employees also with the cost of tuition. And this is another program that we're proposing to you tonight. We're working really closely with our staff on getting them qualified and working with a Teach Scholarship through the state, which covers 90% of the cost of tuition for early childhood staff who are working towards either a certification, a bachelor's or a master's degree. We currently have 5 staff who are participating in the scholarship program, 2 of which are our directors.
Hi, good evening. I'm going to talk about the quality of standards in our program, and we've really been focusing on making sure that our teachers get the education. And through Colorado Shine, there is a PDIS program where they can get on and take training through that. And it goes through all sorts of not issues, but just things to do with the classroom and about creative curriculum and TH Gold. And so it really helps our teachers become more qualified to give that out to children. The big thing that we worked on this year is an inclusion classrooms. And we've been going through training with Alyssa from DU. And working on cycle coaching, practice-based coaching. And we're really seeing a lot of teachers really like this, that we're all involved on collaborating together and looking at each child as an individual child and working on all the children's skills. And then our ongoing challenges is always staffing. And trying to make it where we can, the turnover this year was a lot better than last year. We have 3 new classrooms we have to get staff for. And so that kind of raises our number. We were at 12 and right now we only need 7 more hires. So we are making progress with that. And then also just the inclusion program next year will be happening with inside the classroom with a lot of training inside the classroom with the teachers and stuff. So we're really excited about that.
It is now time for board discussion. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share any comments. We will begin with Director Stepp.
Okay. I have a question that probably none of you can answer, but first, before I do that, I want to congratulate Fareed for graduating this past weekend. Congratulations. I know you've been so focused on getting this up and running. You've done an amazing job. And so this is kind of parking lot for future, like what if the state funding goes away or something changes at that level, and kind of that plan B, like the sustainability of the program and how we can continue it at the same level. So again, I know that hasn't even been on your radar because you're focusing on this, but that's just something with state funding like that. You never know with who the legislatures are, and they might change things up. Do we have enough? How many applications did you say we had? Like 300 some?
Yeah.
And do we have enough seats for all of them at this point?
Yes, we
Yeah.
feel pretty confident that we will be able to have space for all of our families.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, you did an awesome job at presenting everything. I don't have any further questions.
Director Torres?
Yes, I was curious. So very similar to Director Sapp in the addition of the 3 classrooms that was to meet max capacity. Is there, it sounds like we'll fill those additional 3 classrooms, and then there would still be a wait list. There will be a greater need. Are there plans to expand further if that meets our capacity and we still have students on the application or wait list? What does that look like?
We're a little limited in space, but I would love for you to, I'd love all the elementary principals to hear what you said. We're constantly negotiating to kind of move, open another classroom in that wing, or you know, we're always on the hunt for rooms that are open. There's a balance between, yes, having the kids and families that need the spaces and having the staff ready to go, and the classrooms ready to go. So, you know, just to push on these 3 classrooms that we're hoping to open, and especially with UPK in Colorado, it's kind of hard right now to order preschool furniture. A lot of people are doing that. So, you know, there's some logistics in terms of structures with staffing and materials that we need a little bit of time for planning to open a new classroom. So, depending on the space, depending on the need, there's a whole component of licensing. Even though our schools are made to be schools, they may or may not have the proper setup, or that might need some kind of retrofitting to take a K-5 classroom and turn it into a school or a toddler classroom. So, I mean, we would love to keep going, but want to be conscious of our staffing challenges and those components. But the additional 3 classrooms would right now maxes out with our current buildings and kind of the wings that have been identified for early childhood. So we feel like we're a little bit bumping up against, but unless we really decided to do some structural changes across our schools.
So then I have another question about the rate increase. So it was listed in there 6 to 15%. The comment that we're still not quite at the same rate as other district. Was there an intentional slow progression to get us to that same without jumping too dramatically? And if so, what would that look like year over year of a price increase?
I mean, right now we're in about the bottom third of our, and it's the entire, I think, what we consider our local coordinating organizations, right, which is like Lake, Pitkin, western part of Eagle, and Garfield. So it's districts, it's any early childhood program that's in UPK for that entire region. So we were an outlier on the low end. And what that does is it challenges the LCO's ability to get reimbursement through the state when you have when different programs are not within a similar range. And so where this puts us now is at the bottom third. We still, as a program, as a district, we invest a lot of money in the preschool program. It doesn't run on tuition. We can't pay the bills on tuition. So we're still a really far cry from like having a program that would be breaking even. And so we're really honoring our one of our strategic strategies of investing in early learning as a district. Like this tuition doesn't pay the bills for the child. And so this was, the numbers where we landed was really around in conversations with the LCO about what would be more reasonable, appropriate, and also we felt like, given the way UPK is going to work and the additional scholarship opportunities and the kind of layering of funding that we have for families, that it could still be local.
Thank you. And you answered the next one because I wondered how that impacted the reimbursement piece. So my last question, and I promise this is the last one, the partnership with the Growing Years program in Basalt, it sounds so interesting. I was really intrigued by that document and looking at how that's going to roll out. And I know it's fall 2024. Are there conversations about creating something very similar in other areas? Does it sound like maybe there's other partners that are looking at what's happening with Growing Years and interested in pursuing something similar?
Good question.
Really quickly, just to clarify, you're asking like infant, year-round, etc., as similar?
Yes. I mean, that whole, I mean, I saw it was fall 2024 and this partnership was Growing Years, and that was.
We're trying to be very thoughtful and move carefully and really honor the strengths of the two programs that coexist in the Basalt Red Brick building. You know, Basalt is our largest elementary school. And to really achieve the goals we have around high quality inclusion and creating really great environments for all our students, we don't have the space with 4 classrooms. So we have to really shift in terms of what we can do there. Right now, and we're very cautious about a 365-day calendar and, you know, extended hours. And we can't, you know, we're so grateful for the collaboration of the Growing Years board and leadership on this work because we have so much to learn from them. And so we really haven't thought beyond this project. We really want to do this really well. And I don't know that we know. I think we want to see that this can work and we want to pull it off. And we really think there's a great partnership. We have the space in the building. Like that's also, it's also the biggest elementary school. So it should have the biggest early childhood program. So I don't know. I think we'll see. We have a couple of our current directors looking at potentially piloting some summer programming that would align to our ESY and Summer Advantage programming. So like a 5-week summer program that they've explored doing in summer of 2024. So we may have a couple programs kind of pilot something like that next summer.
Okay. Thank you. And that's a great answer. We talk about maximizing partnerships all the time. And this was
Totally.
an excellent example that I'm very interested in seeing how this plays out. So thank you.
Director Teitler.
Thank you for all the work you've put into this. And we know that the repayment of early childhood pays its dividends later on. And so the more students we can get enrolled, and part of this is going to be great for our district as a whole. My first question had to do with just the end of that last question. In one of your focus areas of accessibility, you said the goal is to create this full year option. So is that what you explained, like the most of where you're thinking of where full year option is now, that type of like something like the summer programming? Okay. I also think it's great that as part of this new programming is breakfast and lunch for all of the children. I think that's tremendous. So thank you for that. My last question that I have is around the fact that in the Teach Scholarship and Professional Pathway slide that you shared with us, you said you're working towards pay equity for highly qualified early childhood educators to be on par with K-12. Can you give us an update where that might be heading and how you feel that that becomes a feasibility, which I want to say I completely support. And I think it's important, but I'm curious a little bit more on the how.
Yeah, great question. You know, our goal, and this came from the strategic plan, was to have a bachelor degree licensed teacher in every classroom who is salaried and on the K-12 teacher salary schedule. Our pathway to that, one, is making sure that we have accessible options for our current staff. We don't want to leave them behind when we have the funding to be able to do that. We see that we need to take baby steps towards that. Currently, our funding, like our salary structure for our early childhood teachers, is really only has 2, if you think of like credential columns. One is you're brand new to early childhood, you haven't done any training. And two is that you've gone through the early childhood teacher training that Lori mentioned through the PDIS system. And so that can take 3 to 4 months to move through that.
Yeah.
And so that's really the only pay differential. So we see some opportunity that maybe we're not quite there yet, but could we build on by fall of 2024, third column for our teachers that have an AA, and then get to start moving towards that place where we would have, if you have your bachelor's, if you have that early childhood 4-year degree, you would be at that 50,000 starting schedule. The other piece is when we look at districts who've done this, they have a really robust blended funding system that they are not asking only the district to invest in that work, and that they're really leveraging local partnerships, foundations, grants. And so I think a big part of our strategy is, and we've never really done that in early childhood, in the similar ways that like the Family Resource Center has leveraged grants, our mental health programming really leverages grants, our partnership with the School-Based Health Center is all grant funded. I think when Faride and I work on this, we really believe that we've underutilized blended funding in early childhood. And I think part of our strategy is, one, to do a better job of leveraging blended funding, and two, is to make a clear distinction about what's different about our schools than a lot of our neighboring schools. And I think that what you saw in the high quality inclusion framework is really our effort to really codify, hey, this is what we do and this is why it's different. And that's why we need more training for our staff. We need to work towards that goal. And frankly, why we need more investment from our community and blended funding partners. So we're hoping to take kind of baby steps to get there. But definitely want to head in that direction and want to make sure that our staff come with us and don't feel left behind in that.
And do you see a first step towards this as maybe getting directors on the salary schedule?
Yep.
Because it seems like more of them would have that schooling.
You bet. In fact, 2 of our directors have master's degrees. 2 of them are in that, like, finishing up bachelor's degree programs. So that might be one of the groups that we do move first, just to try to get there on the budget.
Well, anything you can do to get us there, I would be in very high support of.
Thank you.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments on behalf of myself and President Bloomberg, Director Bloomberg, who couldn't be here today. She had a family emergency. But, you know, I think as a former childhood educator and obviously a huge supporter of our ECE programming, you know, I'm excited that we are not only gonna be working towards really not only upkeeping, but emboldening our department. So kudos to all of you guys for all of your hard work. Thank you. I'm obviously very excited about UPK. I think this is going to be great for our district. I think you know, early childhood and educators that are in that department get all of the, like, board members don't get the street cred, but we so appreciate all of the work. And so we just are, I think, so appreciative of this work that you guys are leading and hopefully broadening so that more of our kiddos can engage in the Valley. So thank you. Directors, we will now have 5 minutes for open discussion.
I guess I would just like to reiterate a little bit, for me, the importance of having directors be on our salary schedule. From my experience of having watched my wife work in that position for many years, there's nobody that works harder in our district as teachers than that director position works. They're secretary, they're nurses, they are the banker, they're the teacher, they're the supervisor. There's so many roles that go into that position that are beyond what is even in the hard day of a normal teacher. And I think to reward that position for what it deserves and the key role that it plays in the future of our students is something that we really need to make sure that we're pushing forward on.
And I guess I would just add on to that to say that I also believe the teachers that are in the classrooms deserve to also have and be compensated for the work that they're doing. I think early childhood education is a department in every community that is essential to the learning experiences of all students as they enter kindergarten. And so to be able to now provide free UPK or preschool, in the state of Colorado, it's not only an amazing accomplishment, but I think we need to fully take advantage of being able to not only compensate directors adequately, but also our teachers. It is a profession and we should treat it as such.
Well, I mentioned earlier about the importance of partnerships throughout our valley, and we do have an opportunity to partner with CMC with having a program for our community who's interested in continuing their education in this career field. We have this, and I think there is great partnership right now. I know that there's a lot of discussion and there's a lot of, connections being made with those students or students that are interested in going into that field. And I think that's something we continue to talk about when students are in high school, or perhaps when there's a community member who's looking at changing their career field or their profession. What does that pipeline look like? What does that opportunity look like from an education standpoint that you have right here in the valley? You can get your entire degree here in our valley and a career in our valley. We talk about the challenges of housing. We talk about the challenges of, relocating a family here, and how awesome is that we have that pipeline and a career here all set. So.
Yeah, and I'm so glad to see that we included that sliding scale for employees. I think that's a great recruiting tool as well to show that, if we want to support teachers that are moving here, or anyone that's moving here with a family. So yay, kudos.
Just one last comment I would make is that I feel if we do put early childhood on our salary schedule, that's going to do nothing but help in one of your wants of having high quality workers in this field. When you would be, there's many teachers who would want to work, I imagine, in early childhood, but then they look at, well, if I work as a kindergarten or a fourth grade teacher or whatever, I'm going to get paid that much more. And so if we can even that playing field, I think it's going to allow for the recruitment of higher educated, higher quality staff that we get in that position. So that would be wonderful.
One thing I'd like to add too, I'd be really interested to see how this plays out in data, to see how that, attainment gap is impacted over the years as more and more kids are able to be to access the pre-K opportunities and be prepared for kindergarten, be prepared for first grade, because we lack a lot of options by having this available and introducing more and more kids in our communities to education that early. I think change takes time, but we'll begin to see how this impacts elementary, middle, and eventually has high school as those kiddos eventually, hopefully we're retired by then, but to see how that impacts in the longer grand scheme. So.
Thank you. Please call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to, if I may, to move our proclamation of the fentanyl awareness and Pacific Asian. I'm trying to get down to it and I scrolled way too far. The proclamation for Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month and Fentanyl Awareness Month to perhaps after the public comment. As we have folks here, I think that that's an exciting thing to share when we have a larger audience.
Okay, a second.
Aye.
You want me to take a vote on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Yes. The next business in order is a presentation from Chief Cole on the proposed curriculum adoption.
So I was kind of thinking that maybe this crowd was here for ECE and I was really excited because we were really excited to share everything, but I think the crowd is here for talking about health and human sexuality curriculum. And so just want to frame, today I'm coming back with some updates. Y'all asked for more information. Where do we go from here? What does this look like? What are some of the things that the scope and sequence draft is addressing? So just wanted to bring some of that back to you. And I know you all wanted to open the floor again to hear more public comments. So again, grateful for this community that shows up and gets engaged. And I know that everybody in this room is here because they care deeply about children and care deeply about safety and care deeply about the roles of schools. And I know we might disagree in that, but I know that the core value of what we all care about and what brought us here is the same. So I'm grateful to be having this conversation. And so we just wanted to share again that this was a strategic project that we kind of articulated last year, this time on our strategic plan to work to really identify some curricular resources. You all have seen some of these components previously. The only real health requirements we have as a district is a graduation requirement, the 1 semester course at high school. Everything else is opt-in from our schools. So anything that happens K-8 that is about health or health education is completely opt-in based on the decisions of the school leaders, the curricular teams, and individual teachers. And the other piece that we need to name too is that in the state of Colorado, everything that we're proposing is aligned to state standards, is aligned to comprehensive health and human sexuality state statute. And part of those laws also require that anytime we teach anything related to human sexuality, that we have an opt-out process. So just want to always name that everything that we talk about doing always comes with an advance notification for parents to get to make the decision, review curricular materials. One of the things that's become really clear through this work is that we don't have a standardized process for opting in, opting out. We've been talking about this in policy committee, that's a task that we need to work on and codify. What are our expectations? How do we do that consistently? How do we hold ourselves accountable to clear and transparent communication about that? So just want to name that as well. I think this is also really important in terms of looking at what's happening now. I think there's a lot of questions about what's going on in our schools. And I want you to look at red as in nothing is happening now. And so if you look down the left column here, those are the comprehensive health state standards from the state of Colorado. You see that column that says K4. And what I've listed here is what curriculum have we approved and what's our instruction status? What are our agreements? You'll see the same thing for 5 through 8. What's the curriculum that we have approved and what is our instructional status? And the same for 9-12. And so what you can see across the board is that we don't have curriculum except for a K-6 social emotional curriculum. But even that, we do not have instructional agreements. So there's no clarity on how much do we teach, when do we teach, who teaches, what does that look like? We have a resource, but there's very little consistency across the board for that. The current adoption would address the far right column. And for K-12, the curriculum that we've adopted or that we're recommending for adoption would address all these content areas and would support that so that if a teacher is teaching high school health or is teaching a middle school health class, we would be able to say, which we cannot say now, we have district approved curriculum for you to use. And then the comprehensive human sexuality curriculum that we're recommending would only really cover a couple components of the comprehensive health standards. And really what it would do would be provide curriculum, but it would not have instructional agreements right now. That is part of the work that needs to come. And I would say that just because we don't have curriculum doesn't mean people aren't teaching this. So there are health classes and they do have curriculum, but it hasn't been approved. And there is great things happening in our health classes, but we have a responsibility as a district to provide resources. This is how our work started from that strategic plan. This is what's happened up till this point this year, our timeline, and then this is how we landed with this recommendation, which solves a chunk of that big picture of comprehensive health education, but as you saw, wouldn't cover everything. And it certainly wouldn't cover, especially this question about K-8. What are our agreements? What are we going to teach? When are we going to teach it? Who's going to teach it? Those sorts of things. When do we have time? So that timeline led to this recommendation that's before you, which I know you won't take action on tonight. And what we heard from you last time was so what are we going to do from here? Because you're hearing me say that we don't this is just a curricular adoption. It's not a clear recommendation on what we should be teaching. And so our team sees kind of part 2 after this is to do right away, make sure once curriculum is adopted that our health educators have access to training to jump into this summer. We've already had people reaching out saying, hey, is that scheduled for June Academy? What's going on? And we're saying, well, it's not been adopted yet, so there isn't any training yet. We also need to finish the comprehensive health standards curriculum. You saw all those gaps on that kind of that alignment of the state standards, that we still have a lot of components that we need to flesh out and we need to recommend. For the human sexuality component, which I think a lot of people are really concerned about, especially questions of appropriateness, what are we teaching when? And I mentioned this before, there's no way that our district is going to be able to teach that entirety of the curriculum that's proposed. And so the task of the curriculum adoption team is to really develop what we would call a scope and sequence, which is a recommended list of saying, hey, these are what we believe are the most important lessons to be taught at each grade level. That development of the scope and sequence needs to happen in conversation with our staff, with our students, with our community. And so what I'll show you is a timeline of how we would develop that. Another piece that's been really interesting through this work and talking with families is the curriculum that we've recommended proposes a student bill of rights. And we've had the recommendation from some of the community members who've been in conversation with us saying, hey, could we tackle that? Could we work on adjusting a student bill of rights and making it unique for our community? And we felt like that was a great idea. And that would be a really important task to work on with students and with our stakeholders. As I mentioned before, we need to standardize an opt-out process. And then we would need to, one of the things that we've talked about before is like, who's supposed to teach this? How are we going to do it? And really what we want to try, especially K-8, starting with comprehensive human sexuality, is to basically ask our school nurses, our school counselors, and our nurse educators that are partnering with us through the school-based health centers, who are all represented on the curricular adoption team, to pilot delivering the curriculum. And so that's a really interesting kind of small district, small school solve for a district where we are probably not ever going to have a huge health education department. We have a PE/health content team, and all those people wear a lot of different hats in their schools. So we also want to explore what that sort of a delivery model would look like, knowing that we do not want to put on top of any of our teachers who aren't explicitly asked to teach health to teach a whole nother set of curriculum. So we'd really like to see if we can get schools to work with us to opt into this by having guest educators provide the curriculum and the instruction. So that's what we would do next year. I think another important question you heard me talk about is kind of the how. And so there's a couple of groups of stakeholders that we'd be working with. The health curriculum adoption team would keep meeting year long to really kind of work with and refine those tools. Our students, we have a couple of student leadership groups that really definitely gave Dr. Rodriguez and I some feedback on what they wanted to see in curriculum. So we would come back to students in the fall, follow up, and often it's, again, they get to opt into whether they want to work on this with us, but we would love to pitch the project and see if we could get some students interested. We would love to invite our family and community members who want to work on this with us to commit to participating in the district wellness committee. This is a committee that follows the cadence of the Family Advisory Council. It's one of the breakout teams that comes afterwards. That team meets 6 times per year, September through May. And so we would love to have basically the topic of that committee to be really working on those components, the student bill of rights, the scope and sequence, the standardized opt-out process, those components. And then staff, we would continue to lean pretty heavily on consults with the PE and health content team that meets regularly during the content team meetings, working with school leaders as they actually start to see opportunities to more engage with the curriculum and work with it in their schools. And then also working a lot of the leadership groups that we see in this are kind of our K-12 counseling team, instructional and student services teams as well. If it would help, as I mentioned, the district wellness committee follows the Family Advisory Council. That calendar has not been released yet, but for 23-24, but we could certainly bring it. I know that the Family Resource Center that holds that meeting and owns it is in development of the schedule for next year. So we could have by the end of the year that plan of meetings for community participation. And then just because questions came up, and I kind of kept mentioning this, that it might be helpful for folks to see it. When we talk about a scope and sequence, and the question is like, well, the curriculum we're recommending has 19 lessons for K through 4. What is really most important? And in the first draft of a scope and sequence, what we would be proposing and what we would work to refine with all those partners I listed, these are the topics that are coming up. We are really cautious not to be asking our schools for 6-12 hours K-8 of comprehensive human sexuality curriculum. Like if we got an hour, that would be more than we're doing now. And so just wanted to share that, like, even in the first draft, as I know there's a lot of concerns about appropriate topics, just to see the kinds of, and share the kinds of things that are coming up with that team of what are the topics that feel most important per age level, and what are the kinds of lessons that the team is pulling out to recommend per grade level band. I believe that's all I have for you tonight. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Chief Cole. It's now time for board discussion. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share any comments. We will begin with Director Tytler.
Thank you, Director Cole, for your information. I like where it says that you would be able to present a scope and sequence to us prior to us voting on this. I think is very important that we have that. I think it'd be very helpful with us being able to see what is exactly explicitly being thought to be taught in that area. I also like the idea of guest educators. I would like to see how that plan would work with in reality in the schools. And I just want to make sure that you have some kind of plan to involve administrators in that and see how that would work, and see where they feel like their nurses or their people who would be delivering these lessons would be able to get their time to do that. And then finally, I would just say, in looking at the draft general topics for scope and sequence, I am in support of how you have it at the K-6 level, where it's about personal safety, identifying healthy relationships, basic anatomy and physiology, healthy relationships, anatomy and physiology. Again, I think those are fine topics, in my opinion, to be having at the K-4 especially level. And I think more on the sexual orientation, behavior, identity being the later grades is important that it is set up that way. So to me, as a draft sequence, scope and sequence, it looks positive to me.
Thank you. Director Stepp.
Thank you, Chief Cole, for coming back with some answers to our questions. I just have 2 more. So when you talk about comprehensive health curriculum, and the part of the comprehensive human sexuality is one like module, one part of that overall comprehensive health. Like in your list, it was healthy eating, health promotion, social emotional, substance abuse. It's like it's all inclusive. When you talk about a pilot next year, so if we adopt the curriculum the end of this school year, and next year would be a pilot, is that at all levels, or just the high school level, or how do you foresee that playing out?
Great question. My sense right now, it would be that it's an opt-in. Not all schools are doing health education, and it would be, you know, we want to make it as easy as possible for folks to bring in a guest teacher, to get to know the curriculum, to get to work with it. And what we've imagined so far is essentially listing a menu of, you know, here's the curriculum that we're recommending, the top 2-3 lessons per grade level. If you're interested in piloting, if your teachers want to teach it, great. We don't want to get in their way. If they want to do it, here's the training. Here's how we can make that easy. But if they don't, and they're willing to make time for it, here's how you can, you know, a Google form that would kick to this group of mostly nurse educators that we have who are all have been trained in this kind of work, and would also get training through the curriculum to then work on the scheduling, to work on having them come in and do that. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of how, if there is kind of human sexuality content being taught right now, K-8, it's often in that way. Like there's been a body talk that often has happened at 4th or 5th grade where the school nurse comes in and does it. And so we're kind of accustomed to that sort of work, but it's been very loose. There wasn't any curriculum for that body talk. It often had to do, and I think our nursing team especially had concerns that it was often resources that were funded through like consumer goods that were paying for videos and that sort of thing. And so it wasn't, that curriculum didn't go through any sort of vetting process. And so it would be more of an opt-in, frankly. And I don't know, I think this is a question that we as a district need to grapple with. Like, are we mandating human sexuality curriculum K-12? We feel a great responsibility to say, if we're going to do it, which is what and align to state standards, that we ought to be having approved curriculum, be training and supporting teachers, be making it easy to have this being delivered well. But I think that's, when you saw that, like, do we have a curriculum and do we have agreements? Do we have instructional agreements? Like, I don't know. Our goal was to have a recommended scope and sequence so that we could say, if you're going to do this, here's where we want you to start. This is what's been approved. This is the training that we have. But again, right now, our current status with schools and especially K-8 and frankly, with the 9-12, I mean, the comprehensive health skills textbooks that we're recommending are like, I don't think even a full year can cover that thing. So there's always this area where teachers are deciding what to teach and what fits and what doesn't, what they have time for and what doesn't. And I don't know yet how far we go, other than saying, here's our recommended top 2 hours worth of curriculum in this component. And frankly, the same thing for the other topics, to be able to say, look, when it comes to healthy eating, boy, we really think this is an important lesson for picky eaters who are aged 1 to 5. Boy, this is where we think kids need to start paying attention to sugar and where we think they can start reading nutritional labels. But we're going to have to work as a district to decide. We have so many competing priorities that are taking place in our instructional time. I think we feel a responsibility to say, this is the recommended scope and sequence to do comprehensive health. And we have really good quality resources and training for you. Now let's talk about what we have capacity to really do. So I think my answer is, I don't know.
No, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was like going to start at high school and then we tweak it and then move to middle school or, but I like the opt-in method. But that was my other question, is when it says no instruction agreements, that's the scope and sequence of what you're going to work on over the next year.
Right. And even there, it's you'll notice that what we're saying is a recommended scope and sequence. It's not a mandated scope and sequence. And
so they still
maybe
have
we decide to take
educational freedom to kind of.
Right. And I don't know if that's right or wrong. I can say that, like, it's in the state standards. If we're going to teach it, we ought to do it well with approved curriculum, with trained teachers. And we ought to make it easy for teachers that want to do that, knowing we're a small district and we're never going to have a robust, huge health education department. But how much do we mandate has to happen? I think we have to grapple with that.
Well, I just appreciate that we would have a curriculum, we would have resources. It's in both English and Spanish, and it makes it easier for the teachers. So thank you. I think that's all the questions I have right now. Thanks.
Director Torres?
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to be quick. I did go in, and thank you for attaching the link. The public and everybody has access to the link to the Colorado Department of Education policies and guidelines for Colorado's comprehensive health and physical education standards and instruction. It clearly states anybody that goes to the state statutes, what are some standards that we are aligning to. One that I wanted to point out, and it does specify in here under education regarding human sexuality and comprehensive sexuality education act. And it says in that act, obviously, number one, encourage parental involvement and family communication, which is I think you've demonstrated and what is the goal here. It also talks to the age appropriateness and discussing be comprehensive, age appropriate, culturally sensitive, inclusion of a positive youth development framework, and medically accurate. We have heard so many written comments and public comments driven by emotion saying this is not a conversation to have at school. But we're looking at what Colorado Department of Education says should be discussed in an appropriate way, obviously. So we're not trying to discuss anything outside of what the Colorado Department of Ed is giving us aligning standards to follow. This is really a step in the direction to make curriculum consistent. And I can say I haven't gotten any emails asking us not to talk about healthy eating or the nutritional component, talking about that at home. So it is reflective, I think, and I love that slide that you showed. So thank you, talking about how this really can be done in a consistent way by adopting a curriculum that we know has these components to it. So I wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Chief Pope, for this presentation. I also had some questions for you. I just wanted to clarify, are we forcing all teachers to adopt this curriculum into their classrooms?
No.
Currently, anyone can teach what they want due to no existing curriculum, correct?
Currently, if a teacher makes a choice to teach anything related to the standards you just mentioned, they have to follow state law and do the opt-out process. Currently, if they opted to teach any of those comprehensive health standards, they're not violating any sort of district policy. They're teaching the standards. We would love for that to happen. There's a lot of beautiful standards in terms of computer tech and PE and dance and movement that we would love everybody to find ways to integrate. But currently, if a teacher makes the choice to say, hey, I'm going to teach these standards, they have nothing from us. Like if they say, I'm psyched to do this, my kids really care about this, it's standards aligned, I'm ready to go. If it's human sexuality related, I want to do the opt-out. How do I do it? What do you have? Our answer is like, well, good luck, and that feels really inappropriate for us and irresponsible. Yeah.
This is the second set of curriculum that this board has been able to talk about, essentially, since I became a board member, at least in the last 4 years. When we have chosen other curriculums, do teachers and staff get to choose from what the adoption team chooses at the end of their work?
Good question. There's, and this kind of came up, that I doubt that there's a curriculum that this team has adopted that we teach cover to cover with integrity from start to finish, just given time and constraints. That when we approve a curriculum, there's always this professional decision-making that happens around what are the, we have entire PD and professional development related to what are the highest leverage standards? We can't do them all. We just physically cannot teach them all in 1 year. So what are the most important, and how do we really piece out what the most critical components are? And we as a district provide support for teachers. That's so much of what our content teams do, is try to figure out what are the highest leverage standards to work with. And so teachers are constantly weighing, what do the state standards say? What is the curriculum helping me do? What do my kids need? And pulling all that together and using their professional judgment to make those decisions. What we're really trying to stamp here is that in particular, and you're about to look at a policy tonight, right, about controversial issues, that we're really wanting to make sure that we have some clarity and transparency about those pieces, and that we're providing more as a district for our staff in terms of being able to make those decisions, to know that okay, well, at least I'm working with a curriculum that's been vetted, that I know that the district has approved, that then they're moving forward with those other decision pieces. So I would say that there's always professional judgment in the extent to which a curriculum is implemented. And there's always a number of curricular resources that teachers still lean on, still utilize. Sometimes we love lessons from one resource that maybe is not the brand new one, but it's still standards aligned, it still works, and still we use it. We're a lot tighter in curriculum, and I will defer like Chief Park, jump in whenever you want to. We're a lot tighter with English language arts, with math, with science, in terms of what that curriculum delivery looks like. But there's a whole host of content areas. Health is one of them. PE is one of them, where we're a lot looser in terms of what we provide. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, I think the other thing with that is that something like core content areas, that PLA, that's every day scheduled. Help, this actually is not, it's not a daily period that's in everyone's schedules from K to 12. And so I think, you know, when we're thinking about our math curriculum adoption, ELA, we do actually have scopes and sequences that are expected to be used, not pick and choose. Just to correct it a little bit, but I do think that to your question, is there just freedom of choice of anything? Typically not. I mean, I think one of the things that Dr. Cole had shared with, you know, here's the big buckets of what would be included in the scope and sequence. That is a very key next step. We don't think with even any adoption in the say here's the brain. It does depend a bit on what that subject area is, which the core content area is, and the resources we have.
Thank you. And would, you know, as we talk about the adoption team as well, would we be ensuring that teachers who decide that they do want to opt in and teach this curriculum, that they are getting the training?
For sure. And they're on the adoption committee as well. There's folks that are on it and that I know will jump on a training for whatever curriculum we adopt. They're eager to have higher quality, accessible resources. So yeah, absolutely.
And how long do we think, like timeline, is that that work of the adoption team and then the student, family, community, the district wellness committee, the PE health content team, the level school leadership meetings, and the district counseling feedback and the instructional and student services teams? How long are we estimating that to be?
Yeah, you know, it's taken us a year to get to this. I would say, just given the fact that I'm not sure there's anybody on that team that's a full-time health educator. It's probably gonna take us a year. I think it'll take us all next year to really have that engagement with stakeholders, to see some of the curriculum in action, to get to do parent nights at schools and bring resources to schools. We have partners that are excited to support, excited to use some of the resources. So I think it's going to take time to then get to upload those tools and resources, see them in action, really work with them, talk about, is that working? Is that appropriate? Are we on point? Does this feel right? And really flush it out. So I think I see it. And when we think about it, we listed that scope as like a 23-24, like a whole year plan. It would be great to end up this time next year with the like, hey, here's the scope and sequence that we really feel fits. And frankly, has all the things from nutrition to injury prevention to all those health standards.
So what I'm hearing is that you guys have worked on this for a year to decide on the curriculum, have brought it forward. Once the board makes a decision, then you will take it back to the adoption team and you guys will work on deciding with community and with families and students and other stakeholders on what those adoption curriculum will look like for staff that will be trained on how to disperse it.
Yep. And I still think we get to that question of like, is it mandated?
Yeah.
I don't know how far we'll go with that, but I think we do owe it to our kids to have a approved scope and sequence for comprehensive health education.
Thank you. So I just wanted to add a note that I serve on the policy committee for the district, and we have been talking about the opt-in, opt-out language that we want to make sure is a document that currently we are working on and hoping that will have some language around the expectation for schools in providing opt-out language to families and community, and also what that will look like within regulations for staff. Okay, directors, we will now have 5 minutes for open discussion.
I'd like to pick it up where you had just mentioned the opt-out process. We had gotten a lot of questions, and I know we brought it up at the last meeting as well, as far as the opt-out options. And what do students have that decide their families have decided to opt them out, that they're not in, you know, a space playing games or something, that rather it's it's more academic involvement. What does that look like? There's been some concerns about, well, you don't really opt out because then kids will talk about what they just learned. Well, that happened. They could find something on the internet and talk about what they just found on the internet. But in this space of opt out, I'd like to know more in depth. Like we're talking, you said maybe an hour. Hour would be more than what we have now. And what would that look like as far as opt out opportunities for kids?
Well, I guess I would just, and maybe maybe you do have a response, but I would feel like that would be more pertaining to the policy once we bring it forward. But Cole, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Can I ask one more thing and then maybe you'll answer them both at the same time?
Yep.
I think we also need to look at, from the teacher's perspective, what opt-out means and what is it as far as how much are they going to need to organize and how much are they going to need to plan to have another activity and how much are they going to have to be using some kind of spreadsheet to keep track of who and what. And so I think that's also a part of that equation.
Yeah, so I'm hearing concerns about one, that the protocol, what's the plan for kids who opt out, kids and families, and two, concern on like, what about the logistics of opting out? Like, how does that work? How much administrative tasks, is that? And my sense is that when we say we're going to standardize the process based on the policy, standardize the protocol, a regulation, it would provide guidance around those pieces. And frankly, I would say for both those things, like, we have schools where this happens and it works and schools find out a way. And so my sense would be like, what are y'all doing that's working, that feels right? What does that look like? And so I think we have some schools that we can learn from, but I would anticipate that those concerns would be addressed in that protocol. Does that make sense? Okay.
And then also sort of as a follow-up to that from what Chief Parks was saying earlier, and like, if we do have a scope and sequence, how much are we going to deviate from the scope and sequence? Because if we are deviating in any sense from the scope and sequence, how does that opt out work? Because if a teacher decides, oh, I'm going to do this extra lesson, where was the telling the parents that might have wanted that opt out ahead of time? And so I think we're going to have to be very tight in a way that we do have this scope and sequence to make sure that there isn't anything last minute decided, okay, we're going to teach this, because I think that can put us down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, and Director Tyler, I do think that Chief Park was referring to like core content, but I do think if we go further into that conversation of do we mandate or not, then I think that conversation, you're right, should be had.
Right. I realized she was talking about core content, but she also said it is a very like, this is what we're teaching. And if we are having just alternative lessons or certain lessons, and we're saying there's only a part of the whole big picture, we need to just make sure that scope and sequence is followed in the same way that the other curricular areas are followed.
Well, I agree with what Chief Cole said. It's already happening very well at Glenwood Middle School. So let's, look at what's working and not recreate the wheel.
And also to be clear too, so when those comprehensive health standards in that slide 5, parents could opt out from healthy eating and health promotion, substance abuse prevention. So they could say, I just don't want my child to be involved in those.
For sure.
Curriculum.
For sure. And if we go on the way back machine, my first job with the district was a wellness coordinator, and the eating component there, we're talking about content that overlays with personal family values. And even food, even the way we talk about healthy eating and what is defined as health, like, yeah, we need to be clear and transparent about the curriculum we're offering, how we're offering it, ensuring that it's standards aligned, because these are big topics that are very personal to kids and families.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks. Okay, at this time, we welcome members of the public who have signed up to address the board because more than 15 speakers sign up to address the board. Speakers have been prioritized according to our regulation BEDHR. To expect the time of all who are present, speakers are to limit their remarks to 3 minutes or less. Reminder to all speakers to uphold our procedures for public comment. We ask you to be thoughtful and constructive with your comments, and thank you in advance for sharing your feedback. If you have any materials to share with the board, please do not approach the board during public comment. Please let us know and a staff will collect it. Members of the public who wish to share their views with the board may also do so in writing at any time. For this evening's public comment, we received over 50 written comments. I also want to mention that we will have a timer up, so please, when you hear the buzz sound, if you could please finish your thought so that we can move on to our next speaker. Okay, our first speaker is Angela Floyd.
Hi, I'm Angela Fullerton, a Carbondale mom, and I'm here primarily tonight to talk about, to speak on behalf of a close Latina friend that works for the school district in the early childhood education program. But before I do that, I want to quickly say something about the sexuality education curriculum that has been proposed. Number one, I think it's great that this is going to be, that this is an inclusive program, especially for a population that has historically been marginalized, but it was written by an extreme political organization, which fundamentally sets it up to marginalize and exclude other populations. I'm also wondering how we would fund and coordinate a team of substitute teachers to help teach this for every grade in every school. I myself have signed up to be a substitute teacher as a community service because I'd heard that we were in a dire situation with that. And I can say that I frequently get personal calls from teachers directly asking me to cover for a few hours so they can take a class on a field trip, but they still need the rest of their classes covered, or a teacher that has a special event coming up so they know ahead of time they're going to need a substitute teacher. And when I say they're calling and pleading, I mean really pleading for help because they can't find anybody to cover their classes. So pulling from that small pool of subs is only going to add to teacher burnout. And it's unclear to me where the funding is coming from to pay for these subs because I've read the grant and I only see that it's covering the curriculum and the teacher training, but I might be missing something there. We need to do everything we can to support our principals and our teachers and not burden them with the logistical nightmare, like keeping track of who's in and who's opted out and who's only partially opted out, at least for now. I appreciate that a lot of hard work went into selecting this curriculum, but we really need to get this right. The district shouldn't sunset the Draw the Line sex ed program until we can replace it with something that's not going to be a burden to our principals and our teachers, because there are plenty of inclusive, apolitical, medically accurate, comprehensive, age-appropriate, standards-based, and evidence-based material to choose from. And unfortunately, that took a lot longer than I thought it would. So I didn't get to, to talk about the early childhood education, but I can postpone that for next time. Thank you so much for your time.
Angela Han.
Hi, as a parent and a taxpayer within the Roaring Fork School District, I strongly disapprove of the new health curriculum for 3 reasons. 1, by adopting this curriculum, the school board will be taking away time and resources from our children's core curriculums. Just last spring, the Colorado Department of Education reported that only 32.7% of students met or exceeded grade level expectations. Math proficiency was down to 23.7% across the primary grade levels. Our children are not being equipped with the basics needed to pursue top colleges or to obtain well-paying jobs. Shouldn't our focus be on the recruitment of new core teachers for reading, writing, and arithmetic, knowing that many teachers are planning to retire or resign at the end of the school year? 2, sex education is a very controversial subject, especially when pushing the values of one small percentage on the population onto everyone else. Is this curriculum evidence-based? Will it cause more harm than good? Between 2020 and 2021, there has been a 70% increase in the number of US children diagnosed with gender dysphoria. Statistics show 80 to 90% of children with dysphoria grow out of it if allowed to progress through puberty without intervention. However, when adults intervene psychologically or hormonally, the kids most likely will never grow out of it. Are programs like these to blame for the rise in gender confusion? Sweden, a pioneer in LGBTQ rights, and other European countries have started backtracking and are restricting gender-affirming programs and treatments for minors, stating the risk outweigh the benefits. Why is no one talking about this, and how can we learn from their mistakes? And lastly, 3, I know you guys talked about this, but I just want to reiterate that the opt-out options do not work. This year, my husband and I have made it very clear to school administrators and teachers what topics we would like our children opted out of, as they don't line up with our values and beliefs. Multiple times, the school has failed to remove our kids from the classroom and field trips. Furthermore, our kids have nowhere to go other than the library to read or home when opted out. Even if the board standardizes opt-in or opt-out practices across the district as planned, they will never work. Our children will hear about the curriculum they did not attend in detail from their peers at lunch and recess. Our kids have already experienced this several times this year, along with feelings of exclusion. I urge you to research more traditional curriculums that are age appropriate and actually evidence-based. I feel like if you have to edit the curriculum and pull out things, then perhaps this isn't the right curriculum. Please listen to the comments you heard 2 weeks ago and the comments you're receiving tonight. Reread the written comments. You were elected to be the voice of the parents, not the voice of anyone else. Thank you for your time.
Yolanda Melendez.
Hello, my name is Yolanda Melendez, and I have a 12-year-old daughter, and she goes to school at Ross Montessori, and we're looking to the future to the time when she'll be in school here in the Roaring Fork School District. I would like to read something written by Sarah, who is a parent and a teacher and a community member regarding the Advocates for Youth. The Advocates for Youth health curriculum has been a source of controversy in some communities due to its promotion of gender ideology and sexually explicit content, particularly in lessons about anal sex. One school district that has suspended the use of this curriculum is in San Diego Unified School District. The following are examples of why this curriculum is not appropriate for public schools. Number 1, anal sex lesson.
I'm so sorry. Is this directly from our board comment, from our public comment form?
No, it is not.
Okay.
No, I'm not sure what you're asking me. What are you asking me?
I just read this language in our public comment.
Oh, okay.
I assumed you were reading it from that document.
No, I'm not. I'm reading it from an email. Okay, sent to me. All right. Number 1, okay. The anal sex lesson. The Advocates for Youth curriculum includes a high school lesson on anal sex with graphic pictures. This is not age appropriate or suitable for a public school setting. Number 2, gender ideology. The Advocates for Youth curriculum also promotes gender ideology, which asserts that gender is a social construct and that individuals can choose their gender identity. It is not appropriate to promote a particular ideology that may not align with the beliefs and values of all families in the community or in a public school setting. Number 3, San Diego Unified School District. The San Diego Unified School District suspended the use of the Advocates for Youth curriculum in 2018 after parents raised concerns about its sexuality, sexually explicit content, and promotion of gender ideology. The district acknowledged that the curriculum was not age appropriate for all students and that it needed to be and that they needed to do a better job of communicating with parents about its use in the classroom. It is important to note that concerns about the advocates for youth, it is important to note that about the advocates for youth curriculum are not coming from a place of discrimination, but rather from a desire to provide age-appropriate and inclusive health education that respects the beliefs and values of all families in the community. It is the responsibility of public schools to ensure that students receive factual and age-appropriate health education that prepares them to make informed decisions about their health and well-being.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
JR. JR Corsi.
Hi, thank you for having me. As I said in the last meeting, this opt-in, opt-out option is not doable as was proven to us by the Basalt Middle School, 5th and 6th graders went to Tacot to see a movie and they showed us movies that were not on the list that we approved and signed off on. So how can we trust you for this? I'm here to speak for the silent majority. A lot of people don't want to stand up and speak for the kids in fear that things might happen to their children in schools. Now, mind you, this is all off the cuff. I didn't think you would call on me tonight, so I'm just speaking right from the top of my head. One thing I'd like to say is our children are the victims here. We need to pull back the reins and revisit this thing. Our children do not need to be over-sexualized, as I have said in the past. And I really don't have much to say, so I'm going to read something from my friend Chase McWhorter. He sent this to me just a few minutes ago. And he would like to say, and he would like to take this opportunity to simply say thank you. You are doing more to push kids to seek truth elsewhere than we ever could do as parents. Historically, children are naturally rebellious against authority, which in this case is all of you. And also in this case, the authority figures are the ones ignoring reality and twisted truths and creating confusion. We are starting to see important statistics on two fronts. Parental trust of educators to teach sensitive topics is failing drastically. And we are seeing more young people seek guidance in places like church. So again, I thank you. Please push these agendas harder so we can continue the trend of more parental distrust of the people that are running this agenda, and also to push children to explore their faith in a higher power. Lastly, I am old enough to remember when it was frowned upon, if not outright disgusting, for adults to want to discuss sex with children as young as 5 years old. But yet the board members and the Roaring Fork School District staff are trying to normalize and institutionalize behaviors that even 10 years ago would have made people cringe. I'm sure the lawyers are excited for the upcoming payday. And that's all I have to say today. I hope you guys will pause on passing this curriculum. We need to look at it a little deeper. Thank you for your time.
I would like to clarify for the rest of our speakers tonight that our policy BEDH-R states that you can, you must get board approval to share someone else's comments. Okay. I believe I'm number 5.
Yeah.
Okay, Douglas Carey Bushel.
I am Douglas Carey Fuchel, professor of martial arts for 48 years, instructing 7,000 students and producing hundreds of black belts and beyond, teaching in the Roaring Fork School District from Aspen to Glenwood Springs for 30 years, currently serving as United States Taekwondo Committee, representing United States to 202 countries of the world and 100 million practitioners, many of which are children. Let me start by asking a few questions. Why was this curriculum chosen? What problem is this curriculum supposed to solve? What evidence is there that this will solve that problem? How will the results be measured? What are the side effects of this curriculum? And who was involved in making this decision? The greatest success that I have achieved with my students is helping them understand their identity, destiny, and purpose. This is accomplished by providing the primary objective of the brain, safety. This is supported by validation and relationship. Conversely, when someone is told that the creator that created them made a mistake and is a moron, that their parents that they are supposed to honor are completely incompetent in understanding gender, and that the doctor that delivered them at birth is scientifically deficient, their safety is disrupted. Confusion sets in, and statistically, this results in the leading suicide demographic. The #1 best-selling book of all time says, not to harm the children. And if you do, it is better that a boulder be wrapped around your neck and you cast into the sea. There are consequences for your actions and your choices. Do no harm to the children. Choose you this day.
Kelsey, will you please talk to Ms. Taylor about the, we use our policy BEDHR. And so we sent an email out earlier to Ms. Hirsch and yourself regarding that. I'm happy to talk to you about it when public comment is over. I'll ask again, Deanna Gentilla. Okay. Deanna, oh.
The purpose of education is to pull out hidden talent, to rear or to train. This new sex ed curriculum and agenda makes me ask the question, what is the Department of Education trying to train our kids to be? Are some of our teachers now indoctrinating our kids with the soft sell of inclusion and open-mindedness? Our little ones have pretty good BS detectors, and when their teachers lie to them, they lose the students' respect. I feel that there is a connection between this and the rise of discipline problems in our schools. Also, when children are told not to talk about what they're taught at school, they get anxiety because they have nowhere to turn. Some kids just go along to get along, and others so that they don't jeopardize their grades. It seems that the sex ed program and some teachers want to indoctrinate an entire generation to reject their parents' values. As Hunter Rand recently wrote, as a heterosexual grown man, I have no desire to discuss sex with young girls, and I hope that my community would find it disturbing if I did. However, apparently, if I was trans or a teacher, it would be celebrated for me to discuss my sexual journey with young kids. I reviewed some of the content and it was fine, but it needs to be gone over, and the parts that are lies, porn, or that lead to early sexual curiosity, experimentation in immature minds needs to be removed. Schools are not allowed to dictate Americans' ideologies. Maybe we should step back and analyze the data from other states that have already adopted it. Families should opt in, not have to opt out. Our society is feeling the impact of a culture that is suffering from a serious lack of mental and spiritual support. As a result, kids are growing up confused, depressed, and uncertain of their identity. Many parents are struggling too as a result of taking God out of our lives. There's a great book on this subject by Jonathan Cahn called Return of the Gods. It basically says that when we took God out of our society, starting in the 60s, that it opened the door to evil. That is why parents that are not grounded in morals and common sense tend to jump on board to the praying of the latest new idea to save their children. We leave our mark on future generations through our children. Let's stop and think a bit before rushing into this. We are harming our kids. Our test scores are abysmally low, and we should be focusing on graduating students that can read, write, and do arithmetic, along with imbuing them with a certain can-do attitude to strive for success. Remember the old saying, anything worth doing is worth doing right. Another idea that we have to squelch before it takes hold is the idea that capitalism is bad. Capitalism is what turned America into the country that everyone wants to come to. We have millions of people trying to get into our country from countries that are anti-capitalism. Why? When people are forced to remain silent, or even worse, forced to repeat a lie, they lose their sense of probity, which is the quality of having strong moral principles, honesty, and decency. This is what is leading to further decay in our society. Is it because people who are like this are more easily controlled that the Department of Ed wants to teach this to our children?
Thank you for your. Diana Sanchez. Okay, Yvette Trincado. Yvette Trincado. Jim Tapp.
Thank you. I didn't write anything because I think in a lot of ways we've stopped listening to each other anyway. One thing that was said that I would be in full agreement with is that I think a lot of us are saying we want to do what's best for the kids. But at the end of the day, our worldviews are clashing in ways that it seems that we can't find any middle ground. As I was thinking up during the meeting coming up here, I realized one of the fundamental problems that we have is just the idea that our schools are going to determine our kids' Bill of Rights. At what point have you crossed over your authority? Let me ask this. What if we were to develop a parental Bill of Rights? Parental Bill of Rights for our kids. Would your student Bill of Rights submit to the parental Bill of Rights? That's my question. The idea that a government is going to have this discussion, because the difference is you see them as students, but they're our sons and daughters at the end of the day. And so when we ask this, the thing about the Constitution of the United States that made it great and above other documents, agreements to hold people together, is that when you read it compared to other constitutions and documents, it is unique because it limited its own power. That's what made it great. Because we had a window of time in human history where there were men and women who came together and said, let's establish a nation and let's limit ourselves, which is amazing. Because they could have just said, let's give ourselves all kinds of power. I would just challenge you to think today, even though it sounds like a great idea, with all due respect, I question where you have gotten when you say we will establish a student Bill of Rights. It's out of your purview. It's outside of your rights. I just want to ask you the simple question, because I did a deep dive concerning this curriculum. Have you done the deep dive? Did you go on the website of this curriculum and did you Google those people who were the authors of this curriculum? There was a lady recently just spoke and she referred to it as anal sex. Let me tell you how one of the authors of this curriculum talked about butt play. How did a person who a sexologist, who you would think would be a professional, end up having a voice in the Roaring Fork Valley where she, as an author, is going to talk about sexuality in the context of butt play? I'm a pastor. Why am I saying this publicly? Because you brought me to this place. Scott, I had a lot more to say. I'm sorry, but I hope you change your mind.
Ana Garofalo. Dr. Tom Green.
Thank you. In the last 3 years, our children have been viciously attacked. They've been attacked, some have been called based in science. Yet vaccines, masks, and lockdowns have now been proven to be devastating on the children. Some of the damage has been from a scholastic standpoint, and a lot of the damage has been from a psycho-emotional standpoint. But the actions that have been taken on the children now have been proven not be based in science. I've been a natural health doctor in the Valley here for almost 40 years. My focus is on brain-based wellness. And I have seen an explosion of stress of people, of parents, but especially of children, dealing with anxiety and depression like I've never seen before, as a result of what they've gone through the last 3 years. On a national level, we're seeing an increase in suicide. We're seeing an increased use of antidepressants, SSRI drugs on children, which has been leading to a highest rate of suicide in students. When children are treated like this, or anybody treated like this, their brain is put into a fight or flight or stress or survival mode. And this throws their brain out of balance. It reduces their ability to rationally think, and it's extremely impactful and damaging because this is happening at this point with the children during the formative years in puberty. There's a system in the body called the HPA axis, which is a direct correlation between hormones, also considered chemicals of the body, and neurotransmitters, which are chemicals of the brain in a basic way. What is science showing that is happening? My understanding is that a potential action that some children may be led down would be with these sex hormone blocking drugs. When we start fooling around with this, we have no idea what's happening. Children are already now stressed out, and their thinking, their rationale, their brains are being impaired. And when we start playing God with this situation, we're not God. We have no idea what the ramifications are. Where is the science for this long-term experiment that's happening? The science is not there, although now recent indications are showing that many children who go down this road are victims of suicide. The ramifications are unknown. These situations can be life-altering and possibly life-ending. So this is not only about the curriculum that you're looking at. This is about the ramifications of what's going to happen with the brains of the children that we have the responsibility for. Thank you.
Melissa McCann.
My name is Melissa McCann, and I'm an employee of the Roaring Fork School District. I also had the honor of working with the incredibly qualified team of nurses, teachers, and counselors, and Anna Cole, who researched and chose this curriculum. I know there is a lot of negativity around these topics. There's also a lot of misinformation and fear. School is more than just math, science, and reading. We are teaching children how to exist and live in society. LGBTQ people exist in society and are not a danger to kids. They are your kids. They are also your teachers, coaches, doctors, librarians, social workers, babysitters, and entertainers. Ignoring someone's existence doesn't make them not exist. It just makes them feel alone. We talk a lot about mental health and caring for our students and community, but then the second an inclusive and evidence-based curriculum is introduced, there is an outrage. I have read a lot of comments about letting families teach their children these difficult and sometimes uncomfortable topics at home. While I believe some people will put in the work and talk through these things, I believe most won't have the time. And then we are left with children searching the internet for answers to their questions and using unreliable sources to feed their curiosity. We also should mention the privilege of suggesting having the time, resources, and availability and ability to teach this at home. Many families are struggling to get by, and to add more to an already full plate doesn't seem fair. We talk about equity and I believe having this curriculum taught by professionals in school would make the most sense. This curriculum is not a danger to your children. The real danger to our students and community is ignoring the need for an updated and inclusive curriculum. I believe this curriculum will help our students feel accepted and learn about important topics to keep them safe and in control of their bodies and lives. I grew up when it was normal for my classmates and friends to hide who they truly were for fear of being made fun of or not being accepted. I refuse to let hate, fear, and misinformation take us back to a time where I would have to hide who I truly am. I am a proud part of the LGBTQ community, and I am not a threat. I am a passionate teacher who cares deeply about the well-being of my students, and I would never put them in danger. I talk to them every day. I know their favorite songs. I know what they did over the weekend. I know when it is their birthday, and I know when they are going through a hard time because they tell me. They trust me. Please trust us to make the best decision when it comes to educating our students. Thank you.
Jill Wilson.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. My name is Jill Wilson. I'm a parent, I'm a teacher in the district, and I'm a licensed health educator. I taught the required health classes at Glenwood Springs High School, and I've reviewed the 3 R's curriculum. I strongly recommend that the school board reconsider and proposes alternatives to this curriculum. Parents were allowed to comment on the curriculum through a very vague survey that was embedded in the district newsletter. Dr. Cole told the board not many parents completed the survey. Community members have also told the board that they didn't feel they were notified clearly or sufficiently. Frankly, the school district survey regarding snow days asked for more input than the health curriculum survey did. Parents were asked in the survey, and I quote, "After reviewing the materials, what do you hope the curriculum adoption committee takes into consideration in making their final recommendation?" The health curriculum link given to parents contained 81 plus lesson plans in English, but I didn't see them in Spanish for parents to review. That's a big ask. I would like the school board to put this decision on hold and give time and resources to the stakeholders to fully review this curriculum. During this extended look, parents should be given specific lesson topics and the exact language from a 3 R's curriculum for each grade level, specifically the teacher prompts in a format that's easier to navigate. Some of the teacher prompts include using very specific vocabulary, including vulva and clitoris at the kindergarten level. Catholic students are to be singled out by the teacher at the 7th grade level in several places, and students are asked to role play sexual situations that may go against their personal values. Given more time, the community can take a more comprehensive look at this curriculum, then decide if it is right for their children and the children of those parents and guardians that aren't aware of the content. I'd like to also encourage the school board to do 4 things. 1, seek alternative research-based options for sex education curriculum to give the community a choice. Number 2, consider curriculum that may be fee-based rather than the 3 R's curriculum, which is sponsored by agencies parents may disagree with and include out-of-date web links. 3, refrain from using the opt-out reforms as a win-win solution to this controversial decision. Finally, I'd ask you to build in options into this adoption plan to allow teachers to opt out of teaching any health curriculum that goes against their personal values or that they believe is damaging to children in their care. Thank you.
So Amanda Cervini.
Lucky number 13, right? Upon review of the sexual education curriculum, I'm opposed. My concern is that the proposed curriculum will result in creating an event even greater divide among students, parents, and community. Sitting here, one of the things I keep hearing over and over and over on both sides of the table is opt out, opt out, opt out. If this was such a solid program, I don't see why opt out would be used so frequently. That makes me question. As an advocate in the community, I'm accustomed to being a voice to the children who want to be heard. I asked my 6th grade, 12-year-old son about the subjects of sexuality, puberty, gender roles, and learning these things at school, while also discussing one of the proposed lessons, when a boy feels like a girl or when a girl feels like a boy. His response was honest and appropriate for his age as well as maturity. He said, "It's weird and uncomfortable." For teachers, it's a slippery slope to navigate. In fact, teachers are cautioned in many of the lessons plans with notes. As one stated, you will need to determine for yourself how much and how often when using the pronoun instead of her or him, using gender neutral names in a role-playing scenario referring to someone with a vulva versus a girl or a woman. Think about this for a minute. We want our children to refer to others in this way, but it's not acceptable as an adult. If one of my counterparts or male friends were to introduce me as, "This is Amanda, she has a vulva," that would be sexual harassment or border. Totally inappropriate. Yet we expect our youth to be comfortable with this kind of language. I believe the LGBT community is being used to push a political agenda which has deviated from the core mission of educating kids in basic things they need to exist in society, such as math, reading, science, and history. Sexual identity and how one navigates his or her body is a personal and private matter. Lastly, I'm a Christian, and I can assure you that my beliefs would never be accepted by the school or even considered as an alternative education curriculum, which offers inclusion. However, I want to make it clear, as a Christian, we seek to have more understanding, compassion, and desire to eliminate division amongst anyone. I've been taught and will continue to teach my child to follow God's commandments, to which thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Keeping the commandments and walking the covenant path, our walk demands that we show forth a full measure of understanding and love. We are considerate of children who are uncertain of their sexual orientation and discourage premature labeling. To those of the LGBT community, I ask you to walk beside me, not alone, and implore you to work together with those who may not support the proposed curriculum to perhaps consider alternative resources in supporting the same goal, which should be, as the Pledge of Allegiance used to state, indivisible, meaning unable to divide or separate. That being said, let's unify and not divide. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Jamie Cure, and I am a 3rd grade teacher at Sopris Elementary. I'm here today because of my concern about the teaching of the new 3 Rs, Advocates for Youth Health curriculum in this district. I put before you images taken from a 1st and 2nd grade lesson that is to be taught in a whole group lesson with boys and girls sitting side by side each other. I'd like you to keep your eyes on this image because that is what you are going to be having is 1st and 2nd graders looking at this for a whole lesson, not just for a 3-minute speech. I looked into the eyes of the children in my class today, and I thought what it would be like to teach a lesson like this to them. I can imagine their embarrassment of being shown images like this, where girls are embarrassed that their clitoris was shown to the boys, and the boys being embarrassed that their scrotum was shown to the girls. I do believe there is a time and a place to learn about our biological and physical makeup in this amount of detail. But in a 1st and 2nd grade whole group lesson is not the time. I am reminded of the content that I teach in 3rd grade. In 3rd grade, a major hurdle to leap over is multiplication. We practice making groups and the number in each group with 1-digit numbers, just so we have a solid understanding of the concept of multiplication. But I do not, however, start teaching them multiplication of 3- and 4-digit numbers. Why? Because it is simply not appropriate. Currently in this district, the puberty talk is not until 5th grade, where boys and girls are in separate rooms with adults that are of the same sex and are not even shown images as graphic as these. I can almost guarantee that the majority of the parents of the students in my class have not taught their son or daughter the intimate detailed parts of being a boy or a girl like these images do. Because if they did, I would be hearing this type of language when lining up to go to lunch or thrown out in a comment at recess. At this grade level, we have left it at a student's private area, the area that is covered up by a swimsuit. And in my opinion, that is where it needs to stay at this time and stage of their development in the public school setting. Interestingly enough, in this new curriculum, quote, parents and caregivers are the primary sexuality educators of their children. School districts and community-based organizations should function as partners with parents and caregivers in providing sexuality education, unquote. By showing images like these at this age level, we are not respecting parents as being the primary sexuality educators of their children, because the majority of parents have not gone into this much detail at this age. The Curriculum Advocates for Youth believes they are advocating for youth, but are they? Or are they leading children down a path that they are not developmentally ready for? Thank you.
Here, please. We have allotted 15, time for 15 speakers because we had some speakers not attend. We are going to open it up to some speakers that had previously signed up but had also previously spoken. Elizabeth Taylor.
Thank you. I thought it was going to be, I was going to see more communication and transparency right now. I haven't heard from anybody yet regarding what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks with voting. So I'm hoping we can hear back from that very soon. And I would like to ask that we definitely need to wait more than just 2 weeks from now to vote on this. The parents need a lot more input, and I'm hoping that the board and Nicole will allow for that. I wanted to address the examples that I have found in the 3 R's curriculum that was created by Advocacy for Youth. I'm going to read something right now from the 1st grade. Up here it says, first of all, they conflate gender and sex by saying, when we refer to a boy or a baby or a girl baby, we are talking about what gender the baby is, but I think we've always learned that that's called sex. And then they go on to talk about, this is in 1st grade, we're talking about gender identity. Identity starts with an I. That's how you can remember it. I feel, I know. Gender identity is that feeling of knowing your gender. You might feel like you're a boy. You might feel like you're a girl. You might feel like you're a boy, even if you have body parts that some people might tell you're girl parts. You might feel that you're a girl, even if you have body parts that some people might tell you are boy parts. And you might not feel like you are a boy or a girl, but you're a little bit of both. No matter how you feel, you're perfectly normal. And is this the kind of thing that we're going to teach our 1st graders? I honestly think that it's so confusing for kids to hear that, and it's just wrong. And then we go on to the 3rd graders. Right now, they're being taught all about consent. I mean, this is before they're being taught about good touch or bad touch. It says you get to decide who touches your body and who doesn't. That you get to decide what kind of touch you're okay with and what kind you're not okay with. But I haven't seen anything on here about what touch is wrong, So I think that that's very wrong not to be teaching kids that right away. I'm getting this from the website. I'm not making it up. There's more about in 4th grade and 5th grade, they're learning all sorts of terms. I'm just basically the bottom line here is that what I've concluded is that although there are some things in this program I think are positive, like addressing the bullying and personal boundaries, and maybe in the older children addressing some tougher topics, I think the sex education in our schools should begin later, maybe after 4th, 5th, or 6th grade. And I think that the framework of the education should be examined much more closely by many more parents before we decide on something. The sex and health education curriculum should be biology-based, not ideology-based. And if parents are, if parents are ill-equipped, okay, that's it. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Okay, and we're gonna add Kath Adams as our final speaker tonight.
Thank you so much for adding me in here. I really want to express my gratitude for you listening to me over the past 3 years and bringing awareness surrounding fentanyl. But we need to know that it's just more than fentanyl. This poison is all over, and kids are facing a lot of confusion. And they turn to this because they trust people and they take it, and that's their very last breath. When I go in and I speak to schools, I talk to these kids about their purpose, their meaning, they are loved, and that they are gifts to our world. And that's it. It's simple. I recently gave a 6-week photography adventure and shared my story about fentanyl to the high school students at Roaring Fork. And it was actually their health and art class. And there were kids that were showing up that usually skip this class. And they found some meaning and they found purpose. And many kids listened to my stories with tears streaming from their eyes because they either have a relative, a parent, a brother or sister that is suffering from substance use disorder. So we're making big steps here. I am finding my purpose in life, even at the age that I am. And when you have a child pass, you have 1 foot here and 1 foot somewhere else. And now I understand God's plan for me. And I appreciate you being open to that and recognizing fentanyl and honoring today, May 9th, is Fentanyl Awareness Day. So thank you. And also my daughter Ashley is here now. I just brought her back from college. And she is hitting the streets in Holland, Michigan, spreading this awareness, and has been invited by her college to speak next year. And I feel that this is a very strong move for her. When her sister, the person that she looked up to, the person she could ask advice to, had passed on her own birthday, Ashley's birthday, and how Ashley turned this into hope, and her faith led her that way. So thank you.
Move on to the proclamation. The next business in order is action on the proclamation for Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
I move that the board approve the proclamation for Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Each board member will have 2 minutes to share any comments. We will begin with Director Stepp.
Instead of our comments, I just want to read the proclamation.
Oh, yeah, sure. Would anybody like to?
I guess I will since I did. The Board of Education of the Roaring Fork Schools proclamation honoring Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Whereas the month of May is set aside each year to honor, celebrate,
We are still in session. If you could please refer your conversations outside of this room. Thank you.
whereas the month of May is set aside each year to honor, celebrate, and remember the struggles, achievements, sacrifices, and contributions of Asian American and Pacific Islanders have made on behalf of the United States of America and the world. And whereas the recognition of Asian Americans and Pacific Islander Heritage Month is an opportune time to salute the achievements of the past, gain insight into the present, inspire progress for the future, and teach our students about American heroes of color. And whereas we celebrate the diversity of Asian American and Pacific Islander people in the Roaring Fork School District, our nation, and the Asian diaspora. And whereas in educating the children in the Roaring Fork schools, it is appropriate that all children learn about, reflect upon, and cherish the contributions that Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, both past and present, have made to our nation in the realms of art, business, civil rights, education, entertainment, military, music, law, literature, politics, religion, science, and much more. And whereas we believe our diversity is a strength, where our students' diverse ethnicities and cultures create rich educational and cultural experiences for the entire school community. And whereas we remain committed to serving, inspiring, and promoting student success while improving student equity and access to high-quality education. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Roaring Fork Schools Board of Directors do hereby proclaim May to be Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in the Roaring Fork Schools, and strongly encourage staff and community to reflect on the rich history and teaching of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders and bear witness to the progress and achievements they have made in our country. Adopted and approved this 9th day of May, 2023.
Thank you, Director Stepp. You call for a vote?
Director Tyler,
Aye.
Director Stepp,
Aye.
Director Ramirez,
Aye.
Director Torres.
Aye.
Thank you. The next business in order on the agenda is the proclamation for National Fentanyl Awareness Day. Sorry. I'll wait for somebody to make a motion.
I move that the board approve the proclamation for National Fentanyl Awareness Day as presented.
I second.
Each board member will have 2 minutes to share any comments. We will begin with Director Torres.
I would also like us to take the time to read the proclamation versus our comments.
Thank you. I would just like to preface that I appreciate the time of our team, the chief of police, and especially Kath Adams from Archer of Hope in helping provide me resources and data in the creation of this proclamation honoring May 9th as National Fentanyl Awareness Day. Would any director like to read it?
Would you like to read it?
Board of Education proclamation honoring May 9th as Fentanyl Awareness Day. Whereas National Fentanyl Awareness Day aims to amplify nationwide efforts to increase awareness and decrease demand for fentanyl, which is a highly addictive synthetic opioid that continues to drive the overdose epidemic in the United States. And whereas fentanyl is a synthetic opioid that is approximately 15 times more potent than heroin and 100 times more potent than morphine. And whereas drug traffickers are increasingly mixing fentanyl with other drugs and even putting it in marijuana, cocaine, and other drugs. And whereas only 2 milligrams of fentanyl is considered a potentially lethal dose, it's particularly dangerous for someone who does not have a tolerance to opioids. And whereas there are more cases reported of people overdosing and dying who don't even know they are taking fentanyl. Whereas the Center for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that in the United States, over 150 people die every day from overdoses related to synthetic opioids like fentanyl, including over 900 deaths in the state of Colorado in the last year. And whereas students and families need to have a strong sense of awareness about this drug and the dangers of it, middle school age students have overdosed on fentanyl. Now therefore it be proclaimed that the Roaring Fork School Board of Directors do hereby proclaim May 9th to be Fentanyl Awareness Day in the Roaring Fork Schools in honor of Roaring Fork School student Emily Adams, and strongly encourage staff and community to be aware and to share prevention information far and wide. No one is exempt from the dangers of fentanyl, and it is critical that we keep our students, families, and community safe. Adopted and approved this 9th day of May. Please call for a vote.
Director Tyler,
Aye.
Director Step,
Hi.
Director Ramirez,
Aye.
Director Torres.
Aye.
Thank you.
Can I take a break?
Someone like to make a motion?
I motion that we take a 5-minute break.
I second.
Great, thank you. Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I ask you a quick question? Okay, John, are you exploring my green lights a little bit? You know, we're
You know.
I love it.
It's really nice. Right. So. It is 8:49. We're coming back from a 5-minute break. The next business in order is the approval of the consent agenda, which includes routine personnel minutes from our previous board meeting, policies JLCE, JLCEA, JKA, JLF, and GBG, and regulations JKAR and JLFR. Directors, are there any items that you would like to pull out of the consent agenda for a separate discussion and vote? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
A second.
Can you please call for a vote?
Aye.
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 Okay. The next business in order is a discussion on policy IHBF. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share any comments. Oh, sorry. I should probably wait. It's because Kenny told Director Tyler told me I was doing a good job.
Are we ready to go?
I just assumed, are you guys presenting or are we?
No.
Oh.
Just answering questions.
Well, you guys, we should just call it. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share any comments. We will begin with Director Stuck.
I just wanted to clarify the eligibility criteria. This is really only for those who are out for an extended period of time due to like medical conditions or other conditions. This is not for like suspended or someone who's kicked out.
She's sorry.
It doesn't specifically say that, does it? Might want to add that as somebody that's been suspended or.
There's the eligibility criteria part. I thought.
Yeah, I'm looking at it and it says students who are not eligible, but it doesn't say that specific. Anyway, I don't have any other questions.
Director Torres?
Yes, I was just curious, the second paragraph with the healthcare professional license to practice medicine in Colorado. Obviously with that being very specific within the state, was that added per CASB recommendations? If I'm just thinking, why are we needing to have the licensed healthcare provider be only in Colorado.
And actually review sample policies from other school districts, many of them have that, and so, and see. Reason not to, but it sounds like you're asking maybe.
Well, when I think about policy, I'm thinking about like if a student, let's just say, moved here from another state and feels as though they've been receiving health care, or that they have a trusted healthcare provider in another state, it would be, I think, beneficial to include something upon prior approval from a healthcare provider outside of the state as at least an option. Not saying that it has to be that way. I just think in those cases that students really would feel as though it's medically appropriate, they would be given the option to get that approval outside of the state of Colorado. Thank you.
Director Taylor?
Yes, I had a couple questions. The first one that says, my first question is, it says for elementary students receiving homebound instruction that they can get a maximum of 3 hours per week. And then secondary students can get 5 hours per week. Is there anything else that makes homebound instruction different from students who have been absent for school for like up to 10 days where they're trying to be caught up by the teachers? Is it just this tutoring that is different for homebound instruction, or is there anything else that makes it different?
Big part is the tutoring. I think that for the 10 days, the teachers are sent to work home. They're not actually necessarily getting direct instruction. The tutoring is something new. And it is also not intended to replace the core instruction because the core that they're not included. I would also add that one of the components that I think is different than our services team really what is seen here, because there's also the point was the medical concern. So that managers have to shift back. Our services really cited a number of mobility concerns that are linked to the plan. So strengthening that.
Great. And is there anything in our plans or our policy that says like, how does this tutoring come available? Like who's giving the tutoring, who's paying for the tutoring, where the tutoring is coming from, who initiates it?
Or in our procedure, I think that level is specificity. And if it makes sense, then you can policy building up procedures. And it would be provided by the district. So this is not, up to 3 hours or up to 5 hours.
Great, thank you.
That was me. Okay. I actually don't have any questions because we went over some policy. So thank you guys. Directors, I am going to request that we move our 5-minute discussion to our next board meeting on this policy, since we this is one of 3 readings that we will be seeing of this policy.
Yeah, that's fine.
Works for me.
Okay. Okay, let's see. Okay, moving on to policies related to, or item 9.2. Or is there a presentation for that one today? We start. Director Torres. Thank you.
So in relation to, I think this is connected to an earlier question that I had earlier and that I pointed out with the state statute. Is there any, I didn't see reference to, and I'm really in any of these, right? IB, IMB, KEF or IMBB, in maybe not IMBB, but IMB, when discussing controversial topics, how those tie to state statute. I'm curious if that is something that was discussed in policy committee, or if there is any connection needed at this level. Controversial issues and use of controversial materials don't come up out of thin air typically. Usually it's in alignment with state guidelines or an expectation to meet state standards. Is there any discussion or when it's something that needs to be in alignment with a state statute when we bring up teaching about controversial issues and use of controversial materials? I guess it's a general question in regards to this particular policy. Since it's new, we don't have one.
So that was my remembrance of that conversation. And you all have some questions. Really, there's no state statute on this, and maybe think about like the big state statute.
Okay.
Was that opportunity? Or did it?
Do you feel like you need to?
It's fine. I think that he adequately answered the question because I was really obviously coming at it from it seemed like something that you would want to reference when you're bringing something up, that this is in relation to a state statute that we want to be in alignment with. So.
Okay, Director Taylor.
I have two questions that go together on IMBB exemptions from required instructions, and then KEC public concerns complaints about instructional resources, and both like how it might apply to this opt-out policy. And so, for example, in the IMBB, it says that if one is contrary to the content of the school subject or to any part of the school activity, the student may be exempt from participation. To receive such an exemption, the parent guardian must present a written request for exemption to the school principals stating the conflict involved. So if this is just like opting out of health curriculum, is that a blanket statement that covers it, or every time something comes up, do they have to do it in the same sense? In where it says KEC, it says if they don't like a book that is being read, but then later on it says this does not apply, however, to basic program texts and materials that the board has adopted. So is this sort of like a standalone part with the human sexuality as a difference from everything else? Yes, that's my question. Okay. So maybe just clarifying that would be good, I think. And then I did have a question in KEF, the public concerns, complaints about teaching methods, activities, or presentations. And I know that Director Kuhlenberg had asked a question and I didn't see the answer to it in her but she was asking about what does the word patron mean and why is patron included in this when it's not included in guardian or parents or in general in other categories. Okay, so maybe I didn't see that, or I wasn't looking at the updated. Oh, ding, ding, ding. Thank you. I'm all good then. Thank you.
I'm looking at IMB and kind of second to last paragraph. When teaching about controversial issues, teachers will impartially present the various sides of an issue. I'm curious, and this might be the difference between K-12 and higher ed. The teachers may express their personal viewpoints and opinions. Because I was always taught like the students should never know what your own personal beliefs are. But I kind of like So what happens if they're not impartially teaching? Like if their values and viewpoints and opinions are stronger than they should be, I guess. And I guess that probably goes down again to procedures and regulations, but that just stood out to me like, it seems a little vague to be in a policy, if that makes sense. I don't know where the question, I don't have a question. I guess I'm just bringing up, what happened at Basalt last week, and like, sometimes parents don't know about the controversial issue until the kids come home afterwards and talk about it. So they don't have that option to opt out. So how can we be more proactive and informing? And I know that was a one-off and it changed without, like, we didn't have control over that, but I'm sure it happens all the time. And that's where the, KEF policy comes into play, where if we want to reduce the amount of those types of complaints, we need to be more proactive on the other side. So again, there's no question there. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of talking.
Right. At one point there was to be iteration. I really felt like, wow, this can be even more so kind of like what they do first, right? Talk about what it anticipated. We are always aware of what's values. And I think that the language and here around like controversial issues. Right, like very use this term, but I think that's what we're striving towards, but you name so well, and there's so many dynamics. Objects, projects, power, and all those things that come up around this. Appreciate like this word. Well, we'll have to, not to say, hey, no, let's not tackle any technology. Let's just not do that. When you look at our mission and vision, that's not really one of the we don't have any conflict. I know other values of their family values stack up against people, so they don't have to navigate that. And so I appreciate that we're willing to support that work and use them to put support on that. How do we support teachers when they're excellent colleagues to talk about how do I approach this? What do you think about this? The principals who are aware and can grapple with these issues.
Well, I think we want to strive to make sure that we are presenting, multiple viewpoints and multiple sides, and that takes a lot of training and support to help facilitate those difficult discussions. Thanks.
So I'll just add for the board that the only policy that we will be looking at for 2 out of 3 readings is KEC. So if you guys do have any questions on that policy, I would just ask that you look at it while I provide some of my thoughts on it. My only, and actually this would be just for the slate in its entirety, as we're working on the opt-out policy in that language and the regulations that will be attached to that. I think my only ask is that we somehow include space in these documents for the creation and the alignment that we're going to create with that policy. I think it'll be a useful expectation that we're going to create that, therefore it's going to be aligned with this document and possibly even inserted somewhere, with the refer to language. So I just want to make sure that we find a space for it so that we can refer anyone looking for that clarification in these documents. Okay, but thank you. I guess I would just ask one more time for my colleagues, if you guys have any questions on KEC that you may want to follow up during our 5-minute discussion.
And just for clarification, that's because that is the only one we are taking action on for tonight.
No.
Then why
It's-
would we?
It's one of two readings. So if we have any questions, it would be good for us to ask the questions tonight. Because the other ones will have more time to look at them.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm waiting to see if anybody has questions before we open it to discussion. Now we can skip it.
I don't have anything about the policies themselves, but like in our old format, it used to say that like 1 of 2 readings or 2 of 3 or, and I don't see that. No. Good. Check.
There are many. For our guests, we are using a new system tonight for our agenda, and it's been fun. We still don't have time.
We will tweak as we go along.
Okay, that's what I'm blaming. Okay, seeing that there are no questions, I'm gonna move us forward to the next item, which is JLCDC. Is that also 1 of 3 readings? Okay.
What says that?
Oh. Okay, the next business in order is action on policy JLCDC on 2 of 3 readings. I need a motion.
I move that the board approve policy JLCDC as presented.
I second.
Great, each board member will have 2 minutes to share any comments. We will begin with Director Tyler.
I don't really have any questions on this, and I know you had mentioned about next time coming back to it, but I think I will forget what I wanted to say, and it relates to this policy. And I just think that the part where I think maybe in Colorado on that last policy was in there, because if we're talking about it's something that should have like happened now, that had to be evaluated by a doctor about why it is causing them to miss school. So where that's what it seems to me why it would have the in Colorado there, because it wouldn't have been something prior necessarily that was causing that missing of days. And it seemed like it might be a more current occurrence. And that's why I thought maybe that was still in there.
I'm sorry, Director Tyler, can you clarify what policy you're on?
I was talking about IH. I'm not sure which one, what's the number again, letters. Homebound instruction. It just seems like, I don't know, in this one, it was talking about recommended by a Colorado licensed healthcare provider. And I think the difference here maybe is why that one was in Colorado is because of it being something that's happened recently. Thank you.
Director Stepp.
I don't have any questions.
Director Torres.
Thought this one was pretty straightforward. I don't have any questions.
I also don't have any questions on the policy JLCDC. Seeing as there are no further questions, I guess I would like to ask the board, the directors, that we skip discussion for this item. Okay. Director Tyler, do you have a?
I was just going to ask if like anybody even has any questions, and then instead of skipping and then coming back to it, we can just see if there were any questions. And if so, maybe put it off for the next time, but.
That's it. Next time.
No, I'm just saying if there aren't any questions, then we don't even need to worry about that.
Okay, call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay. The next business in order is board reports and comments. We will begin with Director Tyler.
I think the committee I've been serving on, which is the housing committee, we got our good dose of information about that today. So I'm good to go. Thank you.
Okay, Director Stone.
I think the only update is, as you all know, finding qualified instructors is difficult in this area. We are trying to get a construction curriculum up and running and in alignment with the K-12 pathway. And so we're thinking outside the box, and 4 different institutions, including Roaring Fork Schools, are proposing to all pitch in to help hire a construction faculty person. So I think going forward, this might be a good model to help find those hard to staff positions like math, computer science. You know, well, there's a list of them. We know what they are, but the school district has the same problem as the college does, and so with, you know, it's the 4 entities are the Colorado River BOCES, youth entity, RE1, CMC. But thinking outside the box and how we can be more creative in attracting or employing these hard to fill positions, I think is a good step. So this will be our first attempt at it.
Thank you. Director Torres.
I do not have any board updates at this time.
I guess I would piggyback on actually a board update you gave at our last board meeting regarding pre-collegiate and the conversation around them. I think it would be appropriate for us to open that conversation back up. You know, like historically, I think we, in the work that we were doing, we really just wanted, in the work we were doing around housing, we came to learn of the foundation that exists that currently house the budget for, or I shouldn't say it like that. That
Has a pass through for grants. Yeah.
For grants for pre-collegiate and for the Family Resource Center. And I think it'd be a really good opportunity for us to eventually have a conversation around what that looks like. You know, it does carry our name. You know, I think, you know, there's a broader conversation to be had just in terms of the fact of leadership and how we can make sure that it is representative of our district and our leadership. I also just wanted to follow up on the conversation and the policy in regards to the boards, commissions and committees that exist in the school district for board knowledge. And also like partners that collaborate with us. I think it'd be appropriate to have a conversation around those partners that we work with that are in our schools. How are we making sure there's accountability happening? And I think that'd be a good policy or I don't know, resolution to bring forward for our team so that we can have some like actual crossover from board to board on the history of boards, committees, commissions, foundations we sit on for some historical knowledge. And that's it. Okay. We will now move on to our final agenda item. We'll begin with Director Stepp.
Well, in honor of Teacher Appreciation Week, I would like to appreciate all of our teachers who work so hard every day, and most parents and all of us don't see the all the work that goes into that. So thank you.
Director Torres.
Definitely the theme for the week. So teacher appreciation. I wanted to just really acknowledge I've the honor of having my child in Glenwood Springs Middle School, so I get to experience that firsthand. And having someone in her school that she has gone to multiple times as a trusted adult just to talk to, just to share her day with, it makes me feel really happy and proud as a parent, because she'll come home and she'll share her day. And I think a teacher has such a tremendous impact on how their day goes, and knowing that they're there for them, whether it's for educating them, supporting them, encouraging them, or just being a voice that somebody can talk to, or a presence that somebody can voice their opinion to. I'm very much appreciative of all that they do.
Director Titler?
I'll stay on the same theme, and then I want to add one other, but this week I had the opportunity to substitute for a day in the schools, and I came home and I was exhausted. And so I just want to recognize the staying power and the strength that it takes for these teachers to day in and day out be there. And just when I got home there, my mind was so whirling and like this interaction and that interaction. And like, there's so much that happens in that day of things that should be addressed, should be considered. And it's really an amazing job that teachers do day in and day out. And then also the time of year that it is right now, and with teachers who have been dealing with the same interactions that sometimes have gotten better and sometimes not throughout the year, and the patience that is required to say the same thing again and hope for a better outcome, but to keep it on the upward and keep the positive energy that is necessary. That is just a great work that gets done day in and day out. And then secondly, I just want to shout out David Smith and his pre-collegiate group and the tremendous job that they do as an organization, and for helping so many children succeed in a way that wouldn't be possible without the organization and the great work that is being done there for so many students. So thank you.
I'll just echo the sentiments my colleagues have shared. Thank you so much to the Roaring Fork Schools District teachers that show up every day for our kiddos across the district, from pre-K to senior year. It's an exciting time, I think, for everyone in general, because we're coming down to the end of the school year. So I know all of our kiddos are just ecstatic to get out. And so I appreciate so much more the teachers this week, and just recognizing all of the time and the commitment and the love and the kindness and the fun that they bring our kids. I also want to mention and give a shout out to our kiddos at Glenwood Springs Middle School who did Better World Day today. So they did a couple of community service things in the community across the valley. And I think it's just a special day that our kiddos get to participate in acts of service. And so I appreciate the teachers and the staff who made an effort to ensure our kids got on buses, had lunches, we're connected with spaces, and we're able to, create posters and do all of the work it entails to do some really good stuff in our community across the valley today. So thank you, Cougars, for representing us well out in the community.
Can I do one more? Sorry.
Yes.
There's one particular teacher I want to call out, Sergeant Pfeiffer of the Glenwood High School Junior ROTC program. At this time last year in May, the program was not going to be continued because we didn't have a teacher. And he stepped up and he brought it from the edge of extinction to a thriving program. And they held their military ball on Saturday night, and which was lovely. The cadets had a drill competition, And basically, if you don't know, they line up and they do their right face, left face, about face. And if you mess up, they like tap you out. And so at the end, my son, Cadet Coleman Step won. And then they had another competition for the parents and guests. And it was the same thing. Everybody lined up and did our things. And happy to say that I won that competition. And everyone said, how long did you practice? I'm like, about 5 minutes before we got here. And I beat Paul Freeman, so. But it was a really great night. And I just really want to recognize Greg Pfeiffer for the great work he's doing with that program. Okay.
There's no further business and there is no objection. The meeting will be adjourned. It is 9:24 p.m. Thank you. This is actually pretty. We